Well, I think the biggest challenges for law firms in engaging with partners and fee earners in the implementation of strategy revolve around two things. Firstly, the business model of law firms, and secondly, the culture of law firms. Looking first of all at the business model, it is still the case that law firms tend to value what they do and price what they do by reference to how long they've taken to do it. So lawyers are, not surprisingly, very focused on doing client and billable work because that is what they are trained to do. It's also how they're evaluated and often rewarded. So if you are trying to get them to engage on anything else, that is very difficult. The second challenge, I think, revolves around culture, and it's sort of linked to the first point, but lawyers tend to be quite dismissive about business and management issues. They are perhaps not very good at fully appreciating what difference good management can actually make. And as a result, on the whole, they are quite often dismissive around activities which they would view as being around business or management issues, as opposed to doing things for clients and doing billable work. And those two things create an immediate tension if you are trying to implement strategy, because the partners are really the nerve centre of the law firm, and if you are not fully engaging them, however inspired the management leadership team is, it's going to be very, very difficult to implement any change if the partners are not fully on board. And partners can be very, very adept at being quietly disobedient. So the scope for a partner to just not really play the game is much greater than if that individual were perhaps in a corporate environment. The really important thing is for the management team to realise the tension that I articulated in the answer to my first question, which is the tension between the need to have partners engaged on implementation on the one hand, and partners themselves being much more focused on doing client and billable work. And that tension needs to be acknowledged, and there needs to be a plan to address it. Otherwise, it can breed a degree of scepticism amongst the partners as to whether or not the objective, the strategy, will be achieved. And I think part of being realistic about that tension is to actually think quite carefully about what it is that needs to be done and what involvement, and in particular what time commitment, is going to be needed from the partners. So that's the first thing. Be realistic about the tension and acknowledge it. I think the second thing revolves around communication. I think that law firms, like many organisations, are not always as good at communicating what they want to do as they perhaps think they are, or at least those who are very closely involved with the formulation of the strategy and for whom it's second nature perhaps underestimate how often it is that that strategy needs to be refreshed and communicated so that you really do get the buy-in of the partners to helping the management team achieve what is needed. I think the third thing is that the partners have to really believe in the value of what they're doing. They have to believe that what they're doing is actually going to make them be able to do their work more effectively, more efficiently, and to succeed as a firm. And again, I think quite often that link between the strategy and how it benefits individual partners is not always made.